Welcome to EdScoop TV. I'm Wyatt Kash, and I'm here with Andrew Moore. Andrew is CIO for the Boulder Valley School District in Boulder, Colorado. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah. First, give us a sense for the sort of size and scope of your operations in the school and the number of folks that you support.
Sure. So we're a district of about 30,000 students. It's Boulder, Colorado, and the surrounding suburbs. So there's 5 other cities that we support through that. Mm-hmm. So it's 30,000 students, about 4,500 staff. I've got 50 employees on my staff, which includes both IT and ed tech. Mm-hmm. So at the ed tech, there's 5 teachers on my staff that take care of professional development as we transition really into the digital world for education.
Uh-huh. So talk to me a little bit about some of the current top priorities or initiatives that you're taking on at Boulder Valley.
Sure, I'll talk about 2 of them. First one is more on the ed tech side, which we have a program called One-to-Web, and this is providing a Chromebook to all incoming freshmen at our high school level. Mm-hmm. That's been piloted for the last 3 years, and it's now going to expand down to all high schools from the 2 we're piloting and then into the middle schools this year. Mm-hmm. The beauty of that is with every student having a device, the teachers can really start to transition the way that they teach into this digital world and using digital curriculum and more online resources. It's interesting that the transition to digital takes time. It's not like one day you can take away the textbooks and you can put in, Chromebooks or a laptop or an iPad and away you go. It really is a journey that we're on to get us to the digital world, and the One-to-Web program is going to close the device piece of that. Mm-hmm. The second thing that is more technical in nature is that we've been very aggressive in moving to the cloud, both in software as a service. So you think of things like our school information system. We moved that to the cloud a year and a half ago. It runs in Minneapolis, and our parents and students would never know when they're logging in that that's where the system is. But it's then managed by the company that provides our student information system. Mm-hmm. Our ERP system, which is the nuts and bolts of an organization, we actually moved that to the cloud 5.5 years ago.
Wow.
It is running at Amazon Web Services, but it's contracted through the ERP provider. And that has not only decreased our downtime, but when we're doing upgrades, has made it much simpler because we've got an army of people at that organization that know how to do those upgrades. Mm-hmm. But maybe most important to our transition to the cloud is that our data center, I have 2 data centers right now. They're both housed in 2 different high schools, but raised floors, dual power, automatic replication. We're shutting those down, and we're just now completing the move of about 120 servers to a data center, a professional data center south of Denver. So if you go to, say, our website today, bvsd.org, that's getting served up out of that data center. Mm-hmm. And so it's the same thing in that in this era, I want to focus the limited resources I have into the classroom, into the support of the teachers, and the more of the behind the scenes, the technology side that I can move into the hands of other professionals. I want to do that, and we've been successful in doing that. Mm-hmm. In fact, in a couple of weeks, I'll be pulling the plug on our SAN, which is where all these servers used to run, and we'll actually shut that down. We'll shrink the footprint of our existing data center, which means less power in there, less air conditioning, less battery backup. It becomes much more energy efficient for us as a district as well.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very exciting. Tell me a little about that in the sense of there's a technology lift and shift, but then there's also the transition of your workforce. How do you retrain them? How do you get them the extra skills to operate in a cloud-based environment? Tell me a little of how you did the change management part of that.
So I'm so glad you asked me that question, because the move to the cloud is really 90% change management and 10% the actual physical moving of the devices and getting it up and running. So I started the conversation a long time ago. It started when I actually arrived on the scene about 7 years ago, talking about, what business should we be in? Mm-hmm. And so the seeds or the awareness were planted long ago. And so we never laid off anybody in this transition, but as we had attrition, we would adjust individuals and what they were working on. At the same time, new jobs were created by this. So one of the new jobs is a vendor manager position. So as we acquire more software as a service, you need somebody that is focused on the vendors. And so we created a position for vendor management. As far as my field staff, that is a big retooling of the folks that are actually in the schools, primarily because the Chromebooks, which have now pretty much taken over our district, so we have roughly 20,000 Chromebooks deployed.
Wow.
And less than 8,000 Windows devices. And so the uptake of Chromebooks over the last 3 years has been incredible, much bigger than I could have ever predicted. And then the downturn of Windows devices has been this steady decline as the default device for teachers becomes Chromebooks, and all the students are on it. But what does that mean for the field support team? It means no more changing motherboards, hard drives out in the field. It means when a Chromebook fails that you're swapping out. So it's giving us more time to retrain our field team in the software that teachers are using. And this is a big fundamental change where the expectation for both our service desk, those that are answering the phones, and those that are supporting the teachers in the field are actually getting trained on student information systems, Schoology, Enrich, iStation, iReady, and a whole host of other online software as a service tools so that they can answer that level of question or help the teachers along on a one-on-one basis. So it's really going from a hardware support model to a software support model.
And how did you help the teachers make this adjustment?
So interesting enough, the teachers actually pulled us along. So it all started back 5 years ago when we went to Google as our primary platform. So we switched email, calendar to Google a long time ago. So that was one of the first things to move to the cloud. But as the teachers started to use the Google collaboration tools, whether it was in language arts and they are using Google Docs where they can actually provide real-time feedback in the docs, or it was creating a Google form so that they could survey their parents, they were the ones who started to pull our team along. And so we had this interesting situation where the early adopters as teachers really helped drive the change. Now, we're on what I'd say is a classic bell-shaped curve. The early adopters helped us get to where we are, and now we're in kind of that hump of the curve where the majority of teachers are now getting Chromebooks, but they're already used to the Google environment. And I ask this simple question whenever somebody questions, well, can I use a Chromebook as opposed to a Mac or a PC? I just ask, well, what are you doing on your Mac or your PC that is not in a browser? And if the answer is, well, actually nothing, there's no reason why they can't go to a Chromebook. So the three areas that we still support the teachers in with a PC or a Mac are computer science.
Yes.
Where you're actually doing computer programming on the device.
Yes.
Digital arts and engineering.
Right.
So we have some high caliber engineering programs that require the horsepower of those. But that is a fraction of the learning that goes on in a classroom. So even like our physics class now, we have probes for the Chromebooks. They can do their statistical analysis now in Google Sheets because Google has updated sheets to have statistical format functions. There's pivot tables now, which didn't used to be available. So oftentimes the discussions are about, okay, well, here's the capabilities that are available today that people just aren't aware of.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
One other area is cybersecurity. I know CoSN's just recently issued some new guidelines to help districts. Tell me a little bit about your approach to cybersecurity and how becoming even more cloud-based has either helped or complicated that process.
Well, so let me talk big picture and then I'll come back down to the cloud side of it. Student data privacy, big part of the discussions. We just passed a law in Colorado that was signed by the governor last August. Myself and one of my peers in Colorado helped write that legislation. And so through that process, you gain awareness on, okay, if we're going to have this law, then we also have to have the right mechanisms in place to make sure that we are doing the right thing. So from a very tactical perspective, we've invested in new firewalls, Palo Altos, that have much more granularity in what we can see and what we can do. We even do our web filtering in those in that device. But there's this balance that has to be struck between security and access. And there's a natural tension between my ed tech group, who would like things opened wide open so that teachers can get to whatever the latest, greatest tool is, and my security engineer, who would like things just tightened down so nobody can get to anything, but things would be really safe. So the three of us have wonderful debates, and I'm typically am the arbitrator of where we're going to land with that access, understanding that the more access we give, there's some level of risk that we also take. We mitigate that risk by monitoring what our students and staff are doing. Not monitoring in the sense that we're watching, what they're doing, but through the Palo Alto function and Checkpoint and Cisco and all the big ones, they have these features now where they know about malware, they know about viruses, and the firewalls are already proactively being updated when new ones are being detected. And so that's a key piece of it. The cloud piece, interesting enough, as we were going to the cloud, of course, the first argument or discussion that comes back is, well, that's less secure. And as I was looking into it and we're trying to make these decisions, I'm thinking, well, geez, from a physical perspective, I've got my data center in a high school.
Yes.
You can drive up to the high school, and if you're savvy enough, you could get into our data center pretty easily. The data center we're in now, you drive to the edge of the parking lot, and it is gated. It's almost like a moat. And you don't get into that gate without somebody visually identifying you and then opening that gate. You park your car in the parking lot, then you walk to another gate where you have to be visually identified as well. And then you are funneled into a security office where you have to have an escort to get into where your servers are actually at. And I look at that 2 levels of physical security, and I think, oh my gosh, it's night and day. From a logical security perspective, the company that's hosting us, they have got a staff that's what they focus on is cybersecurity. I have one security engineer who is awesome, but he takes vacations, right?
You allow him to do that?
Yeah, and that's always the dilemma. Okay, yes, of course you get your vacation, but then we always have that little concern: what if something happens when he's out? So I'm from the mindset now, after doing research and making this change, that both from a physical and a logical security perspective, things are safer in the cloud. Any of us can get hacked, but that's no different than if you had it on premise. You could still get hacked. Somebody gets your password. All of IT, I now require a dual factor authentication for all IT employees. So in the Google world, we have to have a secondary code. So if my password is compromised, for example, no one would be able to get into my email or my calendar or my docs without having the dual factor authentication piece. And so, it's about maturing into that world of the trust.
Yeah.
Another question I always ask people is, do you do online banking? And inevitably, most people do online banking. And I use that as an analogy to say, well, if you trust your bank to keep your own finances, and by the way, they've got your social security number, they've got all of your money, then I think we can trust similar type facilities to keep our student data safe.
Well, terrific. Well, in just a minute that we have left, if you had any advice to districts that are embarking now on these larger moves to the cloud and the shifts of staffing that they have to do, what couple of pieces of advice might you offer?
Yeah, I think the 2 things that I would offer is change management is number 1. Have a well thought out plan on how you're going to navigate the change. We actually use a methodology called ADCAR it works very well for us. We've been using it for 5 years. And then the second thing is to hold your course. As pushback happens, as the questions about security or what happens if there's an outage come up, that you've got enough resolve to be able to move past whatever those issues are. It's easy for people to come up with, the 5 reasons not to do something, and we forget about the one big reason to do something. And so that kind of perseverance and just continuing to move forward is so important in these large transitional type efforts.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for stopping by and sharing some of what you've learned and what you are learning and some of the initiatives that are underway. And it sounds like you've made a lot of progress, and wish you a lot of good luck as you continue to do that.
Great, thank you. It's
Terrific.
been a pleasure being here.
Thank you. I'm Wyatt Kash with EdScoop TV. Thanks for watching and being with us.